In August, we are not going to be making a block. We are going to be making outline strips. We're going to start with the fabric folded. You're going to have the selvages together. Here are the selvages. I'll put them together. Have the fold, and I'm going to straighten the edge. For the contrast fabric, you are going to cut 4 width of fabric. This is the width of fabric, so it will be approximately 40 inches. You will cut 4 width of fabric strips at 1 1/4 inch. You may want to cut off your selvages before cutting your strips. This is the main fabric. We will also be cutting 4 1 1/4 inch strips by width of fabric, but we will also be cutting 10 1 1/8 inch strips by width of fabric. This is going to be the contrast. This is the main fabric. Both will have 1 1/4 inch strips for each, but this one will have 10 at 1 1/8. We have our strips cut. I have the 1 1/8 strips on the left-hand side, and then the 1 1/4 inch strips I have cut in half and then alternated them, and we will sew the 1 1/4 inch strips like shown. When you're sewing your strips together, you are going to want to lower your stitch length. We're going to be cutting these apart, and without back stitching we want to have a smaller stitch length. I am just chaining all of the pieces together, and then when we're done we'll cut them apart, press to the dark side, and then we'll continue sewing them together until we have all of our strips together in one large piece. You've sewn the first grouping together, press to the dark side, and then keep going until they're all sewn together. Since both of my fabrics are dark, rather than pressing the seam to the dark side, I have pressed all of the seams going in one direction. They're all sewn together now. And what we're going to do is trim off one side so it's nice and straight, and then we're going to cut the whole thing into 1 1/4 inch strips. You now have your 1 1/4 inch strips and then a little excess. You are going to sew them together end to end to make one very long strip. I've taken all the pieces that we cut and I've sewn them into one long piece. So you're going to do that with your pieces. Then you are going to take your 1 1/8 inch strips, sew them all together in one large piece. You're going to sew to each side of your strips. Sew one side, press, and then sew the other side. Make sure you press to the solid strip. Your doodad strip will measure over 190 inches. Keep it intact, don't make any of the cuts until you're ready to assemble the quilt. You could use this as a border and just use plain strips in between your blocks, or this could go in between your blocks. On one of my quilts I'm going to make double the amount necessary, use them as the doodads in between the blocks, and then I'm also going to use a strip as the border strip for the quilt. You can do whatever you'd like in this case.